This is going to be Pokemon FireRed with Aerodactyl. It has become my nostalgia species, so throughout this video I'm going to be telling stories about these games as I remember them from when they first released. Rules for the playthrough can be found in the description. Now before I get into talking about Aerodactyl, I also want to mention that this is October 1st, so it's the start of Halloween month. Over the next 3 days I will be playing all of the fossil Pokemon in FireRed, and then throughout the rest of the month I'm going to do all of the other games that I play on the channel, doing themed runs around Pokemon that are poison, bug, dark, and ghost types. If you haven't already subscribed and rang the Chimecho, please do it now because there are going to be a lot of videos throughout the next 3 months, and they're not always going to be coming out on the regular release day, Saturday, so expect the unexpected for the remainder of the year. Now, let's talk about Aerodactyl. This thing is honestly terrible in Generation 1 because its only same type attack bonus move is Wing Attack or Fly, two moves which are frankly terrible. Wing Attack has a base power of 35 and Fly has a base power of 70, but only a 95% chance to hit. I had a really unfortunate battle against Sabrina where I just kept missing because of Kinesis. It's really awful. The worst part of it is that none of the fossils in Generation 1 learn the move Rock Slide, and that is really frustrating. Even in Generation 2, Game Freak did not fix this, so despite Lance's Aerodactyl knowing the move, it can't learn it when the player controls it. It is technically possible to get an Aerodactyl that knows a Rock type move in Generation 1. This is an Aerodactyl that knows Rock Throw that was distributed by the New York Pokemon Center in Generation 2. So you'd have to get it in Gold, Silver, or Crystal and then transfer it back to Generation 1 where it could then use Rock Throw. But Rock Throw is really bad in Generation 1. It has 65% accuracy. I plan in the future to do a run with this Aerodactyl in Pokemon Yellow, but I don't think it's going to do much better than the regular Aerodactyl. Rock Throw is just a tool that it doesn't really need. All of this seems really off topic, so let's get a little bit more focused. In Generation 3, Aerodactyl can now learn Rock Slide through the Move Tutor. In my Emerald run with it, this wasn't useful because the Rock Slide tutor is in the post game, but in FireRed he is in Rock Tunnel. So finally, at long last, I'm going to be able to use this Rock type move with Aerodactyl. By the way, this is the 5th run that I'm doing with this Pokemon on my channel, so this has been a long time coming. Still, there are some downsides to using Aerodactyl in a solo challenge. It has a slow growth rate, which is just terrible, and its base stats are okay, but definitely not optimized for this format. It has 80 HP, 105 attack, 65 defense, 130 speed, 60 special attack, and 75 special defense. Of course, the speed is just way too high. I wish I could remove some of those points and put them into its attack, or maybe its defense, because I always forget that Aerodactyl has more special defense than physical defense. I always assume that rock types are just physical walls. With Aerodactyl, I had the choice between Rock Head or Pressure as my ability, and of course Rock Head is going to be better. This means I won't take recoil damage from moves like Takedown or Double Edge. If you haven't played a lot of Generation 3, you might wonder what Pressure does, and honestly it's really self-explanatory. It puts pressure on the opponent's PP and causes them to deplete it faster. Okay, so now Aerodactyl's move pool. It starts with Wing Attack, a base 60 power flying type move. That's a fantastic start. Then it learns Agility, which is quite frankly useless outside of Generation 1. The badge boost glitch no longer exists. It gets Bite at level 15, which is good because this is a special move in Generation 3. I'm probably going to have to use it to defeat Brock. At level 22 it gets Supersonic, 29 Ancient Power, 36 Scary Face, 43 Takedown, and at level 50 it learns Hyper Beam. But unlike Generation 1, this has to recharge on subsequent turns, so I don't think it'll be useful today. Through TM and HM, it actually gets access to a decent number of coverage moves. Dragon Claw, Iron Tail, Earthquake, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Rock Tomb, Aerial Ace, Steel Wing, and Fly. And of course, as I've already mentioned, through Move Tutor it gets Rock Slide. I can anticipate that I won't need to use moves like Flamethrower or Fire Blast because Aerodactyl's special stat is not very good, but coverage with a move like Earthquake is going to be incredibly useful, especially against rock ground dual types. Okay, so now let's get into this playthrough. Because Brock's Pokemon have rock type moves in Generation 3, I didn't really think it made sense to fight him before level 15 when Aerodactyl learns Bite. This slows the run down because with its growth rate, Aerodactyl just takes forever to level up on weak Pokemon. While I'm doing that, I'm going to get into my first first nostalgic story about these games. So FireRed and Leaf Green were released on January 29th, 2004 in Japan, and September 9th, 2004 in North America. I personally got a copy of Leaf Green, which I still have to this day. Here it is. I was 12 years old at the time and approaching middle school. As a result, most of my friends had lost interest in Pokemon by this time, but I was still avidly playing Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire. I had one friend left who was still actively playing Pokemon, and I've told stories about him on the channel before because he gave me a level 100 Aerodactyl in yellow version. He's the same guy who introduced me to StarCraft Brood War, so quite frankly, he had a massive impact on my life. Unfortunately for me at the time, I had switched schools, so we didn't see each other much anymore, and we would talk on the phone after school about these games. I remember constantly sharing notes with him about our experiences in FireRed and how they were similar and dissimilar to the original games. But all good things must come to an end. Occasionally he would prank phone me, and one time he decided to leave a quite inappropriate message, which my parents ended up catching, and after that they called his parents and asked him not to contact me anymore. After that, I had no one else in my life to share Pokemon with, and at that time StarCraft was rising in popularity as a game to play after school with a bunch of my friends from my new school, and as a result of this and other factors, which I'm going to talk about later, I ended up putting Leaf Green down and never finishing my original playthrough. This was the last Pokemon game that I played on release until Sun and Moon. Okay, so my Aerodactyl has leveled up to 15 and learned Bite. This is a slow start, but not nearly as slow as I was expecting. If Aerodactyl can beat Brock on its first attempt, I'm going to be really happy with this opening. Geodude is up first. I go for Bite, doing way more than half. Okay, so this is going to be a two-shot, and it only knows Tackle, which I resist. The Pokemon that I'm really worried about is next. It's Onix, because Rock types do not resist Rock type moves, meaning Rock Tomb has an effective power of 150. Bite does less than half. Onix uses its Rock type move, which only does about a third to Aerodactyl. Alright, so I guess I've got this. Over the next 2 turns, I knock Brock's Ace out, and with that, I've earned myself the first badge and a 10% boost to my attack stat. Plus, I also get the Rock Tomb TM, which I'm going to teach right away. While I don't really like this move because of its 80% accuracy, it is better than 65% with Rock Throw in Generation 1, and it gets the same type attack bonus. Before leaving Pewter City, I grab my repels, and then I go on to Route 3. Here, Wing Attack is still going to be my go-to move. By default, its effective power is higher when compared with Rock Tomb, and it also has more accuracy. Also, tons of PP. This thing has 35 uses, which is just incredible. Outside the Mount Moon Pokemon Center, I pick up the Person Berry, which is going to be very useful against Misty so that I don't get confused by Water Pulse. Inside the cave, I do a little bit of optional training, but not too much. I think that Aerodactyl is going to be okay in the next section of the game because the moves it has right now are quite powerful. By the time I'm heading to Cerulean City, I'm level 18, and since Misty is a water type specialist, I think it makes more sense to go up against the rival. Rock Tomb one-shots the Pidgeotto, so I dodge Sand Attack. That's perfect. Then the Squirtle just uses Tail Whip, allowing me to knock it out over 2 turns, and the remaining Abra and Rattata are never a threat in Generation 3. On Route 25, before reaching Bill's house, I fight the optional Hiker to move the camper out of the way so that I can get access to the Secret Power TM. Watching the footage back, I'm questioning my decision making picking this up. I think I probably could have just relied on Wing Attack throughout the next section of the game. I don't really need a normal type move right now. Either way, Agility's useless, so I put Secret Power in its place. With Bill saved, I head back to Cerulean City to face Misty. Wing Attack one-shots her lead Staryu. Okay, this is a good start. Next is Starmie. I do more than half, and then it chooses Water Pulse, but I should survive this. Well, unless it gets a critical hit. In this case, I don't have enough health, and I get one shot by the Water type. Okay, that is the first reset, and honestly a really unfortunate one. When the Starmie doesn't get a critical hit, it does just more than half, so Aerodactyl survives and gets another hit in, giving me the win. Okay, so a little bit disappointing results against Misty. I definitely got unlucky there, but I'm not going to dwell on that, so let's head south to Vermilion City. Outside of the underground tunnel, I pick up a rare candy as well as a citrus berry. By the way, over by the Pokemon Center, there's a Max Ether here, which I'm starting to pick up in these runs. I think it's useful, especially if you're going to do both League attempts. On the SSN, I take some time grabbing the TM for rest, just in case I need recovery later into the playthrough. The rival isn't a threat because it can one-shot the Pidgeotto and 2-hit the Wartortle. By the way, I think the Blastoise team is the best against Aerodactyl. That said, it's still really not that good until late into the game. game. As you will see, his ace just learns Water Gun throughout the majority of the playthrough, and by Rival 6 it still has this weak move. It also has Rain Dance though, so it can boost the power, and with the same type attack bonus, it's at least decent when it's super effective. And you know what else is super effective against Aerodactyl? Well, electric type attacks. So with the Cherry Berry equipped, let's see how it does against Surge. Voltorb is up first. This might be the one use case for Secret Power because I want a 100% accurate move. I can use it to one-shot the Voltorb and then not make contact with the Pikachu so that it can't paralyze me with Static. All that's left is Raichu. It goes for double team so it doesn't attack with Shockwave, and that gives me a 2-hit with Secret Power. An easy third badge, and with it I have a boost to my speed, which is just completely useless. The next section of the game is pretty slow, so I think it's time for another story. Upon first playing FireRed and Leaf Green, I remember thinking to myself that something just felt really off. The game felt so different from Generation 1. Of course, in retrospect, I know that this is all the balance changes they made to the game, and overall, those were a good thing for the Pokemon series. But as a kid, I really liked it when I could just spam Sleep Powder with my Butterfree and use Psychic moves to defeat everything. These balance changes definitely led to me feeling like the games were not as intriguing as I might have wanted them to be. I think there's another factor contributing to this though. Red and Blue came out in 1996 in Japan and 1998 internationally. So 8 years had passed since the original release when the remakes came out, and only 6 years had passed in the international scene. Just to contrast this with another example, Diamond and Pearl were released in 2006 and their remakes came out in 2022. That is 16 years later, double the time. Of course, VDSP severely disappointed most fans of the originals, and I think that's because the anticipation for the games was so high, largely due to how long we had been waiting for them. While I don't think the Generation 4 remakes were handled particularly well by the Pokemon Company, I do think that the longer waiting period set them up for more success than FireRed and Leaf Green. With such a short period between the original games and the remakes, the nostalgia wasn't quite as high as I think it could have been. If FireRed and Leaf Green had released, say, after Black and White, or maybe after Diamond and Pearl, I probably would have been much more interested in them. In an alternate reality, I could see myself coming back to the Pokemon series a little bit earlier in my life, maybe around 18 or 19, just to relive my childhood a little bit with some remastered games. Overall, I think this had an effect on my playing experience, and by the time I reached the Sevi Islands, which felt forced into the games, I just really wasn't enjoying myself. After all, my post-school routine now consisted of chatting on MSN with all my friends from my new school and playing StarCraft against them. Okay, so we've made it through Rock Tunnel and arrived at the move tutor. It is at long last time to teach Aerodactyl Rock Slide. This move has 75 base power, 90% accuracy, and a 30% chance to cause the opponent to flinch. With the same type attack bonus, its effective power is 112, making it the best move if I want raw damage. Of course, I still think Wing Attack is the better go-to move, and you might be wondering why I'm not teaching Aerial Ace right now, and it's mostly just so I have moveset flexibility throughout the mid-game. Giovanni in the Rocket Hideout technically has Rock-type Pokemon, but they are irrelevant because I still have Bite, and I've also given my Aerodactyl the Black Glasses to boost this special move's damage just slightly. Usually I'm most scared of the Kangaskhan because it uses Fake Out followed by Mega Punch, but since Aerodactyl has a resistance to its normal type attacks, I'm not worried. With Giovanni finished off, I head over to the department store and pick up proteins to boost Aerodactyl's attack. Wing Attack should be more than enough to take on Erica, so let's go and do that gym next. Inside I fight 2 trainers to get some experience, and then I go up against Erica. Technically speaking, she has neutral damage, but Aerodactyl's Wing Attack does enough to knock the Victory Bell out in one turn, and if that's the case, you know that the Tangela is also going to be a one-shot. Beyond that is Vileplume, which is a little bit more bulky, but once again, Aerodactyl comes through with a one-hit, making Erica a clean sweep. Against the rival in Pokemon Tower, I'm going to mention Ancient Power because I tend to like to use this move to try to get Omni boosts. It has decent base power, and in Generation 3 it's a physical move, so I'm going to keep it on my set just in case I need to solve a really tricky trainer by getting one Omni boost. That said, I want all of you to know that I am not intentionally trying to use this move to just Omni boost all the time. I want to avoid using it if I can and make my Pokemon just win in a straight up fight. That said, if I know I'm going to knock the opponent's Pokemon out, I might as well just use this move because it has more upside than something like Rock Slide. After all, that move has downside because it can miss. Once I finished the rival battle, Aerodactyl doesn't have any issues in Pokemon Tower. The ghosts here are easy to finish as well as the rockets. But then on Cycling Road, I decide to do some training. Biker Ruben, the guy with 2 wheezing and 1 coughing, ends up poisoning Aerodactyl early on into the fight. Every turn I take damage now from the status condition, and because of that, Aerodactyl ends up fainting. I hadn't saved for a little while, so I'm definitely going to take the blackout here instead of resetting. I still wanted experience, so I battled some other trainers because I didn't want to battle Ruben again. In Fuchsia City, before the Safari Zone, I used the Move Tutor to teach Aerodactyl Substitute in the place of Bite. By the way, if you didn't already know, this is definitely the best move in the game. It's probably the best move in Generation 3, although I'm just starting to get used to using it in Emerald version. One of the reasons it's so fantastic is because it gives you a way to bypass status moves as well as status conditions, and that's very important for the next gym leader, who's going to be Koga. His first coughing is pretty bad, so I can just set up Substitute here, blocking its smoke screen, and now I can't be statused by Sludge. Also, with 2 hits, it's not able to knock me out, and I'm choosing Ancient Power just in case I get an Omni boost. Next is Muck. Now, this thing is normally quite annoying. I choose Ancient Power, then it breaks my Substitute, and I go for Rock Slide just in case I flinch. Now, if you're wondering why I'm not resetting Substitute, it is because I don't want the Muck to spam Minimize and cause me to miss over and over again. I just want to deal with it as soon as is possible. But this ends up being a mistake because Koga buys a lot of time for this thing with healing items. Then he uses Sludge, poisoning Aerodactyl, but don't worry, I have a Pecha Berry. That said, I get poisoned a second time after not re-establishing Substitute, and then Muck crits with Sludge, knocking me out. This loss is definitely player error. I should have reset my Substitute and just not worried so much about Minimize. In the second battle against Koga, he is not a threat, and with him out of the way, I'm going to go to Saffron next. This is because the Fighting Dojo is great experience, and with Wing Attack, I can easily sweep all of these Pokemon. I continue training in Sylph, get to level 43, and briefly consider learning Takedown because I do have Rock Head, so I won't take recoil damage. That said, I think my current moveset is just better. I'm going to hold on to Ancient Power for now. I am fairly underleveled, but I was feeling okay about Aerodactyl's chances against the rival, so let's see what it can do at level 43. First turn I establish my Substitute, then I knock the Pidgeot out with Ancient Power and move on to his Blastoise. It only knows Water Gun, it also uses Protect, which is just frustrating. It does it 2 times in a row. After that I'm using Rock Slide, it does more than half. While Water Gun does break my next Substitute, I hit with my next Rock Slide and that's that. Wing Attack one-shots the Execute. That was probably a little bit premature, maybe I should have used Substitute there. That would have blocked the Growlithe's Intimidate. But I can always set it up against the Alakazam. I guess it goes for Reflect. Other than that, it can't really do anything. Its only damaging move is Future Sight. It goes for this right before I take it down. I block the Intimidate and then 2-shot the Growlithe. Okay, Editor Scott here. I just want to say we had so many problems recording the audio for this project because it was recorded when my audio interface was starting to die. Since then, I've replaced it, so I'm going to redo this voiceover. Just know if my voice sounds slightly different, it's because it's in a healthier state now after I have learned that I should really be hydrating and getting good rest every night. All of my Pokemon already know this. Of course, they use TM44 in every single playthrough, but as a human being making these videos, I had to learn this the hard way. After all, I am really stubborn. Anyways, now let's get back to the narration of the video. And yes, we did just cut into the Giovanni battle because I have something to talk about here. That's the fact that Ancient Power makes contact in Generation 3. This is really weird to me because starting in Generation 4 it is special and it does not make contact. But here, because it makes contact, I get poisoned by Poison Point, of course. And as a result of this, even with my Substitute in place, Aerodactyl faints. And by the way, the animation for it fainting from a status condition behind a Substitute is really funny. It switches the Substitute out, brings Aerodactyl back on, and then Aerodactyl faints regularly. And all of this is just a chaotic blur when you're playing on 4 times speed. Anyways, Giovanni shouldn't be a problem. In the next fight, I didn't realize that Ancient Power was making contact, so I'm using it again against the Nidorino. That said, this time Poison Point doesn't activate, so I'm able to take it out. From there, things are much easier, so Giovanni is finished. Okay, so it's time to face Sabrina. Her Pokemon are physically frail, and Aerodactyl is very fast, so she's not a problem. Yeah, that's it. I don't really have anything else to say about this battle, other than the fact that Venomoth, another fossil-type Pokemon, is a little bit scary, but Aerodactyl manages it with no problems. Here I want to take a moment and check in with my level. Aerodactyl is really feeling the slow growth rate at this point in the game. If I use 10 rare candies before the league, I'm probably only going to be around level 60, and that makes me pretty worried for the champion's Blastoise. There's good experience from some of the trainers in the next section of the game, so I'm going to take my time here and do a bit of additional training. After doing this, my Aerodactyl is level 48 when it faces Blaine. Okay, so I can't dodge the first Intimidate from the Growlithe. That's annoying, but I can dodge the second one if I can keep my substitute in place. With the Rock type, I resist Fire type moves, so Aerodactyl still has its substitute when he sends his Ace in, which by the way comes in second. It breaks my substitute with Fire Blast, but I've dodged all the Intimidates now. Blaine uses a Hyper Potion. I continue using Ancient Power. I'm really hoping to get the Omni Boost here, but I don't from the first hit or from the second hit. That leaves only the Ponyta and the Rapidash, but I should be fine against them. I go for one more Ancient Power. Still no Omni Boost. I'm getting what feels like terrible luck with this move. After that, Rapidash is last. I use Rock Slide, and it still has enough damage even with the one Intimidate, so Blaine is finished. Okay, so I kept Ancient Power for all this time, and it didn't really come through for me, but now I have to give it up. In its place, I'm going to teach Aerodactyl Steel Wing, so I have an answer to Rock-type Pokemon. I do this before battling Cool Trainer Warren in Viridian City Gym. This is so I have super effective damage against his Rhyhorn. By the way, I'm always thrown off by the fact that the Steel type is not resisted by the Ground type. I know that interactions don't always go both ways, but this one in particular really throws me off. Okay, with him out of the way, let's take on the last gym leader. You might be wondering, wouldn't Earthquake be more useful for this fight? And that is a good question if you play a lot of Generation 1. In Generation 3, unfortunately, I don't have access to the TM until after I defeat Giovanni. Luckily for me, both of the Rhyhorns are really easy to manage. The second one does use Rock Blast, which breaks my substitute. Also, this move continues hitting once it's gone, but it's doing so little damage that I just set up substitute again. Then the Rhyhorn uses its typical move, Scary Face, and I knock it out. From there's only 3 Pokemon left, and the first one is Nidoqueen. Once again, didn't realize that I'm making contact with moves like Wing Attack. I get poisoned, it's chipping away at my health every turn. While I do manage to take out the Nidoking, I just barely don't have enough health remaining, and I faint before even attacking the Dugtrio. My solution to Poison Point is just to equip a Pecha Berry. This time, the ability doesn't even activate, so Aerodactyl wins on my second attempt. With Giovanni finished off, I've now earned myself the TM for Earthquake, and I'm going to teach it to Aerodactyl in the place of Steel Wing. As I exit the gym, I just want to mention another alternative strategy if I really didn't want to trigger Poison Point. I could potentially teach Aerodactyl either Flamethrower or Fire Blast for special damage, which is neutral against the Nidos. I don't really know if that's a better option over Rock Slide though, because I could get some flinches using the physical move, and considering how much higher my physical attack is when compared with my special attack, the Fire type moves seem less than ideal. Well, unless we use like Sunny Day alongside them, but that starts to get really weird, and I would have to lose both Wing Attack and Steel Wing to make that possible. Okay, in terms of moveset now, Aerodactyl has reached what I think is going to be almost its final form, lacking only Aerial Ace. I think this gives me a decent chance against the rival, so let's see how things go. Turn 1 Substitute, then Rock Slide to knock out the Pidgeot. After that, he sends in, of course, his Blastoise. It still only knows Water Gun, but it also has Rain Dance, so I was hoping that it would prioritize setting up, and that is what it does. This gives me another Rock Slide, causing a flinch, and as a result, I'm able to take the Blastoise down to a tiny sliver of health, and then it breaks my substitute. This is not a good position, because now if I set up substitute again, it is going to continue to attack, which is exactly what happens. I thought that this wasn't a good situation. I figured he was going to heal his water type, but no, he just keeps attacking. As a result, I can also attack and finish it off. From there, things get much easier. Earthquake 1 hits the Rhyhorn. I should have set up Substitute again, maybe on the previous Pokemon because Growlithe does intimidate me, but I probably don't even need that much attack because while Alakazam does no Psychic, it just goes for Future Sight and I 2-hit. From there, all that's left is Execute. I don't 1-hit, get paralyzed with Stun Spore, take damage from Future Sight, but Execute uses Solar Beam and my status condition does not prevent my hit. So the rival's defeated. I have made it to Victory Road. In this location, things are going to slow down, both intentionally and unintentionally. These trainers are experience rich, so I want to do training to level Aerodactyl up more before I start the league. I think if I take more than 3 turns to knock out the champion's Blastoise, I'm going to have to rely on flinches from Rock Slide, and I really don't want to do that. Also, speaking of Blastoise, I fight Cool Trainer Colby, who has 5 water types, and yeah, his Blastoise knocks me out. another time that I didn't save, and I'm gonna have to take the blackout. This one is more painful than the previous ones because I have to backtrack from Viridian City all the way to Victory Road. I skip Colby entirely, I don't want to have problems against him, instead prioritizing just some wild battles to level up to 57. This is going to be enough to go over a damage rounding threshold anyways because I have 11 rare candies, so I can feed them to Aerodactyl before Lorelei to bring me up to level 68. Okay, it's time for the Elite Four. In Generation 1, Lorelei caused so many problems for Aerodactyl, but with Rock Slide, I think it has a decent shot against her. The same type of attack bonus move knocks out the Dugong in a single hit, and the Cloister is so much worse in these games. While I'm not able to do enough damage to finish it in one turn, it just sets up spikes, and then Lorelei gives me 2 more turns because she uses a full restore. I wasn't sure if I was going to one-hit the Lapras, and I knew that the Slowbro was going to get at least one move in, so I wanted to set up Substitute before moving on to them. Because she's using Jinx, I figured I had a chance for it to go for Lovely Kiss, and I gambled with Substitute. It luckily works out for me, and then I knock the Psychic type out. Next, she chooses to send in her ace, Lapras. Okay, will Rock Slide do enough damage? And the answer is yes, surprisingly it does. The only Pokemon left over is Slowbro. Rock Slide does half, and causes a flinch, giving me the win. Okay, Bruno's up next. This one shouldn't be that bad. I have Earthquake for the 2 Onix, and then I have Wing Attack for all of the fighting types. In this battle, his Pokemon have the less powerful Rock Tomb for coverage against flying types, but when they get Rock Slide in the league rematches, he might be problematic. Even after the Machamp survives and uses one Scary Face, Aerodactyl is still faster than all of his Pokemon, so that was an easy sweep. Agatha is next, and while Earthquake would be fantastic in Generation 1, here it's useless or almost useless. It does hit the Arbok. But outside of that, I don't really need to worry about her team because they're so reliant on status conditions, and with Substitute, they have no effect. Okay, so this Lance fight is a little bit embarrassing. Sometimes I have input errors, and this time against the Gyarados, I go for Substitute, which I think is the correct choice. Dragon Rage is not able to break it, which is perfect. Then I use Rock Slide, and it just barely doesn't knock out. And then he's going to use a healing item, so I figured I can set up my Substitute again, but I accidentally misclick on Earthquake. From there, I didn't think I was in a very good position, so I go back to Rock Slide, and it misses. This is a really bad scenario. My Aerodactyl is not able to one-hit his Aerodactyl, so I take damage from Ancient Power before finishing it off, and now I only have red health left over for his final 3 Pokemon. Rock Slide flinches his second Dragonair. It's technically the one he sent in first, and then his first Dragonair, which he sent in second, also gets flinched. I move on to the Dragonite, but I do not get my secondary effect against it, so it's able to take me out using Outrage. When I don't make input errors against the Gyarados, I'm able to knock it out with my Substitute still in place so that I can bypass Aerodactyl's damage. But remember, this thing also knows Scary Face, so it can just do nothing to me, which is what happens here. Against the Dragonairs, I take my time. When they break my Substitute, I just set it back up and then continue knocking them out. This way I still have my defenses set up when the Dragonite comes in. Rock Slide does more than half, Dragonite just chooses Safeguard, and I knock it out on the next turn. So Aerodactyl has finished off the league, and before we go into the champion, I just want to reflect on the time that it's getting to this point. My Lance split had a time of 1 hour 15 minutes and 10 seconds. If we look at the current tier list, Hypno's time of 1 hour 19 minutes and 4 seconds is the only time slower than Mewtwo. Well, it was until I got really impulsive and just filmed a Mr. Mime playthrough, so yeah, I guess there are 2 Pokemon ahead of Hypno now. I recorded this video before I made those impulsive choices, so just remember that that's the context for all the voiceover that comes after this. So Aerodactyl might be able to get the second best FireRed first playthrough time. That is, if the champion doesn't cause any significant delays. The Pidgeot is pretty bad against me. I can set up Substitute, which blocks both Feather Dance and Sand Attack, and Aerial Ace isn't going to do very much because I resist it with my Rock typing. As was the case in the former battles, he's going to send in his Ace next. So the question is, how much damage is Rock Slide going to do? Well, it just misses on the first turn and Blastoise sets up Rain Dance, but on the second turn it gets a critical hit. However, this is not enough to finish Blastoise off. So apparently I'm doing slightly less than half. However, then the champion is forced to use a full restore, so I get a chance to reroll my damage ranges. The first hit looks like it's doing about half, and I go for Rock Slide one more time, and it comes through for me. Okay, that's perfect. The Rhydon that's next can be managed using Earthquake. I actually did not set up here with Substitute. I thought it was probably going to go for Rock Tomb and I would just survive that hit, but instead it uses Scary Face, lowering my speed by 2 stages, so now I'm slower than both the Arcanine and the Alakazam. Aerodactyl gets taken down to yellow health by Psychic, and then Earthquake one-shots. hits. Okay, that's pretty good. The champion still has 2 Pokemon left over, but Executor is one of them and it's an extremely trolly Pokemon to face. I figured that Wing Attack with super effective damage might have enough to knock it out in one hit, but unfortunately I was wrong. This allows it to use Sleep Powder, but I prepared for this, giving Aerodactyl a Lumberry. I heal the status condition, the champion goes for a full restore, and then Aerodactyl crits, knocking the grass type out. Okay, all that's left is the Arcanine, but it gets intimidated off, lowering my attack stat. And it also is going to move first. I am making objectively a bad call here going for Rock Slide. I was thinking about the flinch chance, but obviously that's irrelevant because I'm slower. However, I still hit, doing more than half, and I survive the Arcanine's first attack. Then the champion gets stuck in a healing loop using 2 full restores. Finally, Arcanine hits with Flamethrower. I was so worried about a burn, but the status condition does not happen, and as a result, I'm able to knock out his final Pokemon. In my first FireRed playthrough with Aerodactyl, I was able to get a time of 1 hour 16 minutes and 45 seconds. With 5 resets, a bunch of frustrating blackouts at level 70 with a game time of 4 hours and 46 minutes. Lately I've been waiting until the league to do my ranking of the Pokemon in the current tier list, but I'm going to do that today with Aerodactyl since it is going to get the 2nd place spot. I think it's quite impressive that this slow growth rate Pokemon was able to beat out Hypno. That said, when I used the Psychic type, my skill level was lower, so maybe it'll do better when I come back and reflect on these two. Alright, let's get into the league rematches and finish off FireRed. With a slow growth rate, the Sevi Islands don't give me a lot of experience, so by the time I'm facing Lorelei again, Aerodactyl is only level 74. This battle is generally a little bit more difficult than the first time around because the Lapras, the Dugong, the Cloyster, and like the Piloswine I guess have better movesets, although the last of these is generally kind of irrelevant. The Dugong is also kind of bad because it gives me time to set up substitutes spamming double team. After that, the Cloyster just fails a supersonic, and this feels like a moment directly drawn out of Generation 1. After that I one-shot the Jinx, move on to the Lapras. Rock Slide does not do enough damage, but it does cause a flinch. So after Lorelei uses a healing item, I'm able to make it to the Piloswine with my substitute intact. Even if it hits me and breaks the substitute, I should win, unless Rock Slide misses, which by the way it does. Luckily for me, the Piloswine's Blizzard also misses, giving me the win. Okay, so theoretically, it seems like Lorelei would be the best against Aerodactyl out of the league members, but that's not actually the case. Bruno is terrifying in all of the league rematches. Now that I've got a decent amount of experience in FireRed, I actually think that this might be the most difficult battle in the entire game, at least when considering all species of all different types. We'll have to see as I collect more data, but right now, this does feel like the most difficult point in any playthrough. The reason is that the Steelix are just so hard to get through, especially with physical attackers. When you do manage them, the fighting types then have great coverage. The Machamp has Cross Chop, Earthquake, Brick Break, and Rock Slide. While the first Steelix isn't able to break my substitute using Rock Tomb, I am just barely not getting the 2-hit on it. Knowing that Bruno's going to heal, I make sure to set up my substitute again, and then I get a lucky critical hit, allowing me to knock out his first Pokemon and move on with the fight with my substitute intact. This is a really good scenario for me. I can now one-shot the Hitmonchan and the Hitmonlee using Wing Attack and make it to the Machamp. My flying type move does not do enough damage here, so I lose my substitute to a Cross Chop. Bruno uses a full restore here, but it doesn't save the Machamp. However, the following Steelix is at a higher level. That means I'm going to have to 3-hit it. I figured setting up my substitute again didn't make a lot of sense now and just went for Earthquake, but Iron Tail hits like so hard, doing massive damage to Aerodactyl. This move can be pretty inaccurate, so I tried to set up my substitute hoping it would miss, but it doesn't. I try for Earthquake, which doesn't do enough damage, and as a result, I get a reset here. Honestly, since Bruno was introduced to the series, he has just continued to get stronger and stronger. In his first appearance in Generation 2, he was okay, and then he got better for the first league attempt in this game, and now he's a complete menace. Because of my slightly too low damage ranges, I'm just not able to manage these Steelix in 2 hits, which really holds Aerodactyl back, giving it 2 more resets. I really wasn't sure what to do here other than black out and level up more. However, I tried one more fight, and I really do want everyone to pay attention to this, so if you're looking at a different monitor or you're listening in the background, now is the time to pay attention. I make it to his Machamp with low health, so things are not looking good. But then, after using a healing item, he switches the Machamp for Steelix. This allows me to hit for a tiny amount of damage with Wing Attack, which generally would be a bad thing, but in this case, I think it means I'm going to be able to play around his full restore. If he doesn't heal the Steel type, then I'm going to take less turns to knock it out. However, with all that said, it is going to get in one attack, and that will finish Aerodactyl. But you know what? Iron Tail comes through for me. It just misses, giving me 2 earthquakes, and with that the Steelix goes down. I just clean up the Machamp and take a very lucky victory over Bruno. Agatha is really annoying. I'm not able to one-hit any of her Pokemon, plus the Misdreavus as well as the Gengar no Thunderbolt, and by the time I've made it to the Arbok, I no longer have my substitute, so it gets to intimidate me, slowing my damage output down. All of this is just frustrating, but it doesn't actually cause a loss. Okay, time for a rematch against Lance, and this fight is so much easier than his first attempt. Unlike Lorelei, Bruno, and Agatha, he got much worse in the rematches because the Gyarados just loves to spam Thunder Wave when it actually does something, so I can set up substitute for free. I actually could keep going for this move and just heal up with the leftovers, but I decided this was unnecessary. Then Rock Slide gets a critical hit, one-shotting his lead. Okay, so he sends in his Ace Dragonite next. My substitute tanks its attack, giving me 2 turns of Rock Slide, so it goes down. And then Aerodactyl continues getting very lucky, critting his following Kingdra for the 1-hit. As was the case before, his Aerodactyl is able to survive 1 hit from me. Luckily, it doesn't get an Omni Boost from Ancient Power, and I'm able to finish it off using Rock Slide and Wing Attack. I should have reversed the order though, just in case he used another healing item. All that's left is his first Dragonite. It's at a lower level, so Rock Slide is able to 2-hit. Before the champion, I have 2 rare candies left over. I'm going to use them now to bring Aerodactyl up over a damage rounding threshold to level 78. With that, we have made it to the final battle. His lead is Heracross, and that's a problem for me because its Rock Tomb is able to break my substitute in 1 hit. This means I'm either going to have to one-hit it using Wing Attack, which probably should be Aerial Ace by this point, or I'm going to have to get lucky with it missing a Rock Tomb or choosing Counter when I set up Substitute. Honestly, I don't really like either of these scenarios, but I think the Substitute strategy is what I'm going to have to go for because of the Blastoise. Luckily for me, Rock Tomb missed on the next turn, so I one-shot with Wing Attack, and then he surprisingly sends in Arcanine. This is because it has Iron Tail, which it sees as super effective, and after it survives 1 hit from Earthquake, it uses it breaking my Substitute. That's before the Blastoise comes in. Do I have to rely on the Steel-type move missing in addition to the fact that I'm going to luck through the Heracross? Really doesn't feel good. Blastoise is next, and I get very lucky here. Hydro Pump misses, and then Rock Slide flinches. But unlike the first champion battle, 2 attacks with the same type attack bonus move are not enough to knock the Water type out. Because of that, it consumes its Citrus Berry, but this doesn't restore enough health, so he chooses a healing item. I went for Substitute anyways, predicting this, but that's an unfortunate scenario in itself. Now Hydro Pump is going to need to miss once, or I will have to flinch. The luck finally catches up to me here. I tried the next fight not setting up on the Heracross, but after Intimidate from the Arcanine, I'm just not going to do enough damage, so this is definitely not a good choice. Sometimes I can have really bad luck where Rock Slide misses not once, not twice, but a total of 3 times against the Blastoise. The only reason I was able to attack this number of times anyway is because the Blastoise missed a Hydro Pump. Even with better luck, I am still losing here, so I decided to invest in an alternative strategy. What if I teach Aerodactyl Sunny Day so that I can cut the power of Hydro Pump? Maybe then I'll have a better chance against the Blastoise. But to teach this move, I have to give up one of my current set. And I thought the best option was Wing Attack because it's not that good, although now I'm going to have to use Rock Slide against the Heracross. I think overall this is going to increase the amount of luck that I need to win. As you can see here, the Heracross is now knocking my substitute out, forcing me to reset it up before I two-shot using Rock Slide. With Arcanine out of the way, I still have my substitute available for the Blastoise. This gives me one turn to set up Sunny Day. We go back and forth for a little bit, but eventually I flinch the Blastoise with Rock Slide. I'm able to use Sunny Day to play around Rain Dance, and then I survive Hydro Pump and knock Blastoise out. Okay, I have super effective damage against the Tyranitar. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it survives on yellow, uses Thunderbolt, and knocks Aerodactyl out. This was incredibly frustrating when it happened. I wasn't sure what to do. This is another time when I'm considering just blacking out and trying the whole league again. At a higher level, I would definitely have a better chance against Bruno, but before doing that, I want to try this battle a few more times. Using Sunny Day against the Heracross is just not the right choice. Look at here, I get to low red health before I finally knock it out, and I only was able to do that because of a critical hit with Rock Slide. I guess I'm gonna have to revert to my initial strategy of hoping for flinches. And in the very next battle, I get exactly what I need. Second turn, I get to flinch on the Blastoise. This time though, the Citrus Berry does not put it in healing range, so I knock it out and move on to the Tyranitar with green health. I know that I'll survive a Thunderbolt, but then maybe the Alakazam and Exeggutor can mess me up, at least if I don't get one hits on them. However, Aerodactyl comes through with a critical hit, finishing off the pseudo-legendary. Alakazam is next. Surprisingly, it survives an Earthquake. I really didn't think that was going to happen. This lets it hit me with Psychic, doing a decent amount of damage before I finally knock it out after 2 healing items. The only Pokemon that's left is Exeggutor. This thing could honestly cause a serious problem, especially when it gets a critical hit with Psychic. I think I need a miracle to survive this, and it is in fact a miracle because Aerodactyl survives and knocks the Exeggutor out. My second league time ends up being 30 minutes and 25 seconds with 9 resets at level 78 with a game time of 6 hours and 8 minutes. Alright, so Aerodactyl has finally reached its final form. It definitely performed much better in this game when compared to the previous 3. But completing this run left me wondering, how would Kabutops and Omastar do in FireRed? So tomorrow I'm going to be back to play Omastar, and the following day I will complete Kabutops. If you support me on YouTube or through Patreon, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.